Alright, so in this video I am going to be showing you how to do a transfer for this project. So the first thing that you need is you need to figure out what you want to draw, and to do a transfer you just need a printout. It can be in black and white or color, and what you're going to do is you're going to flip it over and then just take a regular HB pencil, make sure it's nice and sharp, and you're just going to shade the back as hard as you can. So this does take a little bit of time, and you want to shade the entire back until it looks like this. So it should look like this. Shade it nice and hard. It doesn't have to be pretty. Any little white spot you definitely want to try to fill in as much as you can. And then the next step we're going to need is a nice piece of drawing paper. Drawing paper is a little bit thicker than computer paper. It's a little bit heavier to the touch. So we're going to set that down first. And then we're going to take our printout that has all the shading on the back, and we're going to line it up to the top. Sometimes I have to trim the edges, and that's okay. But once you've lined it up, you're just going to take some regular, not super sticky tape, and you're going to cut it into little tiny baby pieces. And we're just going to take both of these papers and do what is a hinge tape at the top. So just make sure you line it up and just take the tape, fold it over. That's hinge tape. I usually do 3 little pieces, and that's pretty good. If you use too much tape, what could happen is that you could accidentally rip it off later, so make sure that you don't use too much tape. So I'm going to cut some more pieces for my hinge. Usually 3 is a magic number. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this into little baby pieces. You want to make sure that you don't accidentally tape your artwork so that you can't see it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and tape the left hand side. I'm right-handed, so it makes sense for me to do that. Again, you want to avoid taping the actual artwork, and just keep it as nice and straight as possible. If it's a little off, it's okay. Alright, so that leaves 2 sides open, and you want to leave some sides open so that when you transfer, it will easily show and you can easily see it. So I just adjusted my tape real quick because it wasn't laying flat. Alright, now it's laying flat. Alright, so to do our transfer here, you are going to need a colored pen. I usually like red. It's just a preference because it's really easy to see. And when you start your transfer for the first time, you want to start at the edge. And the reason being is if you start at the edge and if you go too hard, it's easy to recover. So for this project, what you want to do is take your pen and just start to outline your objects. So if your red pen is new, you might have to scribble it on a sheet of paper, but just barely trace. I would say light pressure. And when you get 1 or 2 lines down, lift it up and you should be able to barely see your lines. That is a good thing. If you see your lines and they're super dark, my guess is that you pressed way too hard. So I started off by tracing my box. I can barely see it. If you close your eyes and run your finger over your lines, you should not be able to feel any kind of divots or slopes or things like that. So for this project, when you're transferring, you definitely want to trace with a kind of light to medium pressure. The first time you do it, I can check to see if your pressure is good. But just do a little bit and then check it every now and then. Every day when you start a transfer, you just want to check your pressure. Now I just traced this and I can see it, but if you can't, you might do just a little more pressure. What you want to avoid is you do not want to press hard. If you press hard, what's going to happen is it's going to create what's called ghost lines. And those are little divots in your paper, which are no fun to fill in when you're shading things. When you're doing your transfer of these characters, you do want to draw in the hatch marks. So any hatch marks you see, you want to draw in some of those because it's going to help you with your shading later on. So I'm drawing in those little tiny hatch marks for this. So just drawing in those. I don't have to freehand it later. For the little shirt here and any kinds of details, I want to draw that in too. So I'm just going to take my pen and draw in some of those because that's going to help me later on with shading this in. So the more details you put in, probably the better. I'm going to go ahead and do his spikes. And again, you just, if you're a beginner, you want to check every now and then to make sure that you're not pressing down too hard, because if you do, you might have to start all over again, and that's not fun at all. All right, this is looking pretty good. Now I'm going to go in and do my details. So as you can see, the transfer process does not take a whole lot of time. You definitely want to make sure you get all the little details now so that you don't have to freehand them later. Especially the shading part. Like I'm just drawing in some of my shading lines here and some of my finer details, some of my hatching and cross hatching that's going on here, so that when I lift it up, you should barely be able to see what's going on. So if I were to zoom in, you would see all of this really easily, but because it's just a video, you might not be able to see this as well as you would in like real life. What you're going to do is you are going to trace all of these characters. Make sure you do not press hard. If you press hard, you're going to create ghost lines, which makes it very difficult to shade later on. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and good luck.